for this.
There
we go.
Welcome to the Bleeding Burgundy podcast. It is Monday, July 12th, and this is a bonus episode. We have my co-host Keith Gray joining us, Big Doug from the Big Doug Show, and Kyle Ronick from the Burgundy Zone. What's going on, fellas? How you doing?
Living large. Thanks for having me on.
It's another exciting day here as a Washington fan, is it not?
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of boring there for a while, but something was bound to happen, So here we are. We have the big news. Jason Wright dropping in his briefing that no to the Warriors, and as you would imagine, the craziness on Twitter. It's nuts, man. It blew up today. I want to kind of go around the room. And Kyle, I'm going to start with you first. What is your overall feelings of this?
At first I was like blown, not gonna lie to you. Like, obviously it was kind of emotional pull, like kind of like, well, why is Warriors like the one being singled out? Because based on the framework of what's being said, it didn't make sense. Because whenever you're talking like about like lawyer speak or like corporate talk, they're usually, it's black and white. There's usually a very fine line that's driven down, and there is no gray area. So for them to say there's no correlation between Native Americans imagery and that's why Warriors is excluded, then common sense logic would tell you what Keith was arguing earlier, is that you would have to look at other imagery as well, and there's other things that involve with that, like wolves, for instance, buffalo, whatever have you. That being said, am I blown that Warriors was excluded? No. I kind of figured that was going to happen because they were going for the shock in all of it. And if the two front runners, being the Red Wolves and Warriors, were one of the ones picked, it kind of takes away that shock and all because we're all expecting it. Said for a while, I thought it was going to be something that we're not thinking of, we haven't really seen yet. And I still kind of feel that way about it. So I don't think it's any of the front runners anyone's thinking of. I do think there are layers to this. Is the reasoning dumb? Is the way the society looks as Warriors are linked with Native Americans in any way is kind of ridiculous, obviously, but I get it. We have to get away from it. And with that understanding, now I'm ready to have a conversation.
Sure. Doug, what about you, my man?
Well, it's not surprising. I think, Kyle, I don't know. I think you were on that one we did with Jason 6 months ago. And they pounded how they were not going to, anything close to Native American stuff was not going to be in. Braves, stuff like that, Warriors was never going to fly. I don't think that anything that starts with an R is not going to fly. I'll just tell you, I don't think so. To me, this is not a surprise. I've been telling people for over 6 months now, Warriors was never going to be it. It's too much of a hassle. First of all, you got to go get the basketball team to sign off, which they could have get done. That's not a huge obstacle, but we've just been told too many times that if it even comes close to Native American stuff, they're just not going to do it. And so this didn't come as a big surprise to me. What I think we need to look at is why. Why today did Jason Wright go out and tell you one name that won't be on the list? He didn't shoot down 4 or 5. He took one name, right, that was fairly popular amongst the folk and said, this ain't going to be it. So smart people do things for a reason. So that to me was more curious. Why Warriors? Why today?
It seems like it's a schedule. It seems like they have a scheduled release for the new rebranding. And what this is they're going down a list and taking off the top ones one by one. Because you have to imagine if they take out half the list, people are going to start speculating. People are going to start going through random names and looking for other ones. So they have
to in the talk about it. Yeah.
Right. They have to slowly over time nip away those names. And I completely understand that. I completely get it.
Well, and what aren't we talking about right now? It came out last week.
That's a very good point. Very good point, Doug.
Just like when I said this, when Dan Snyder gave the press release, Washington Football Club came up twice in the first paragraph, and Washington Football Team came up again at the end. And what did me and my brother start talking about? Not what happened to Dan that day. We said, did you see that, he dropped the football club twice and the football team once? So, again, the smart people do smart things. Look at the timing always.
Well, everything that they're doing is also reactionary. They want to see how we're going to react with the things that we're seeing behind the lines. It's the reason why last week they brought in folks to FedEx to do a little reactionary for this video that they posted on Twitter today, right? Where you see, Rio, you see Chris, you see some other fans where they're looking at names. First of all, that video was edited all different to how it really went. But the point is, it was reactionary. They want to see how fans are going to react to the different things that are put out there, is my point. Warriors being announced today, Doug, you brought up a great point. Why? What was the reasoning to single out that name? That was a very popular name with a lot of people.
Right.
I think that name, it wasn't liked by everyone, but it was one of those names where it could be 75-25 maybe,
right.
Just throwing a number out there. And Jason Wright today said, today's the day where I'm gonna go ahead and let people down on this one. And I'm interested to know why, which then of course this brings up, the Wolves debate. And, as you could see, everybody exploded on Twitter. It was a full meltdown because people are trying to make sense of why they would not choose Warriors, other than what Jason had explained in that video as to why they're not choosing, the Warriors, right? So Jesse, go ahead on your part.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you guys said. That Doug's right. The timing is very, very interesting. I mean, I personally wasn't a fan of the Warriors name, but that name made sense for our franchise, going out debating on the names. I mean, we've been debating this shit for over a year now. Warriors, Wolves, Red Wolves, Renegades, Red Tails, freaking like it's been the hot topic.
And Warriors was my favorite of the group, to be quite honest with
you. And a lot of people, it was a lot of people's
football
favorites.
team, which I still think it will be. Warriors, I like.
I have a feeling. I have a feeling that you're right. I mean, it was the timing is definitely curious, man, and maybe they're just trying to get away from the other news that happened last week. But it was definitely interesting. Maybe they're just trying to let some of the fan base down, gently, and try to get them away from, for when it does drop, that people being upset. They don't want to be that upset. They want it to be a fresh rebranding, and then maybe trying to let people down gently, away ahead of time, will help soften that blow for when the name does come out.
It's the right move. And the reason why I say that is because with my interaction with Jason, name change wasn't really even discussed until the very end of our conversation. And basically, I want to be careful with what I say here, not because I'm giving anything away or I'm trying to be exclusive. I just want to make sure that they're not stupid. They know that the decision that's going to be made, fans are going to be pissed.
Yeah, because of course, it's a very popular name. Yeah.
Right. It doesn't matter what name they choose. They know there's going to be a certain percentage of fans that are going to be pissed. They know, they understand that they cannot make everyone happy. So in that sense, and that's exactly what was told to me, not that, I mean, I would have, anyone could guess that. So with that being said, the early letdowns on these names for people that are, standing for, it kind of makes sense. So that way, when the actual team name does get announced, the blow has already been, taken 6 months prior, so thoughts on that?
I'd love to ask Jason Wright if they didn't wish they had reconsidered the timeline. The time in 2 years seems like a long time, and frankly, I think, and maybe that's part of it, but I think there's people are just ready for it to be done and over with now. I'd be curious to know who set that timeline, and if they wish they could have had this thing ready right now for this year.
Man,
I'm not sure
Kyle,
about that,
go ahead.
though. because Jason has said in our meetings that this like takes a long time. I think he said
I heard 18
Seattle,
months,
yeah,
18
Seattle,
months
I
or
think
something
he
like
said
that.
took like 2 years for them to actually go through everything that they needed. So they knew that this was going to be a rushed process, and they had to do, their due diligence during this rushing of the process, kind of. Because to your point, Doug, nobody wants to actually sit through this, and fans of this team don't even want to go through a rebuild, let alone have to sit for 2 years going through a rebrand. People are going to get antsy, and so I think in a year and a half, I think it is spot on. I think that is about the right time for them.
Yeah,
To
for what everything that I heard, it was supposed to, and this was like in the beginning when this happens, and a lot of the professional lawyers came on the radio shows and podcasts and stuff like that. They were saying about around 18 months. It's been around 18 months. What people are kind of up in arms about are the fact that, well, they should have had this ready. They knew they knew this was going to happen sometime down the line. Well, the fact of the matter is, Dan Snyder did not want to get rid of the name, and he wasn't going to until he was made to. Basically, what do you guys think about that?
I totally agree with that. I definitely think that was the case, and that's why they've kind of bent over backwards for the NFL. Everyone knows that Jason was Roger Goodell's boy, and that's why they brought him here to basically oversee the operation and make sure that everything goes according to plan. I think one of the biggest things that's getting pushed aside here is I don't think there's a lot of people who really do care immensely because of the Warrior name, because people are like, oh, you're flipping out just about the name change. No, it's more than that. It's the reasoning behind it, because it's not making sense, because you're singling out one of them, but if you're using the criteria that you've set in place, it would exclude a bunch of them. And so that's why it's kind of like, what's going on here? Why is that first one going? And I think that's what most people are angry about right now. I don't really think there's people out there that are like, oh my God, I can't believe it's not Warriors. It's the reasoning behind it, because it's not making sense. There's a lot of confusion right now because it does seem hypocritical to a point.
Will the internet explode next week if they say that the Wolves are out too? Because it's too close to Native American
that's a great
imagery?
point, Doug, because that's what my thought process is. If you were going to categorize them, right? Like you were going to put the Warriors fans in one box, and you're going to put the Red Wolves fan in one box. And let's just assume, what would you guess how they were going to react if they were the first ones to get the news? Who do you think would take it worse? And let's just be honest with ourselves.
I think the Red Wolves fans would probably take it a lot more harshly because a lot of those fans are a younger fan base, and they're more prevalent on social media as well. It was the hot thing, quote unquote, the hot thing when this new branding, the name change, when people were trying to come up with, everybody and their brother was coming up with the name. And Red Wolves, it stuck because people did not want to get rid of the past. They wanted to keep
HTTR.
to kind of and that was one of the main deals. The curly or the kind of the flowy, the curly R. The symbol, the Redskins symbol that Joe Gibbs basically made famous. They were adapting a wolf to that R. And don't get me wrong, I like some of those images, man. There's one with Terry McLaurin in all white jersey with freaking claw marks, and then that R that was a wolf was adapted to. I thought that looked pretty slick. Now the problem of it was it got fucking over flooded. Like Twitter was nothing. Redwood, and that's what turned me, and probably a lot of older fans. I'm 40. Okay, I'm not that old, but I think if it just wasn't so bombarded.
Take anything with an R off the list. I'll bet you.
And it could be right. Who knows?
Because they don't want you being able to wear your old anything that's got that old R. I'd be stunned if it's anything with an R, no Native American stuff.
It's not. I know I don't know for a fact, obviously, but I'm willing to put my savings that it's not going to be Red Wolves or Wolves. I just don't think that's going to be the case. But I don't think it's going to be that for the reasoning that some people on the internet think. I don't think Wolves. And yes, there's ties to the Native American culture, but there's a lot of things that ties to the Native American culture. A lot of things. Don't even start. not yet, at least. But they're not going to X the Wolves just because a chief wore the skin of a wolf on his head. I'm sorry, that's not the case.
They
in my
said
opinion.
They're Xing Warriors for that exact reason. So you mean to tell me that you
okay?
So hold on. So you just sat here and said about Native Americans and that there is a tie there, but you don't think that they would X them out. But they did that with Warriors, which is a even more basic name.
There's ties to almost anything in North America. You could probably tie back to the Native Americans.
Not all of them carried the name Redskins.
Bullshit.
Not every one of them carried the name Redskins, though.
And listen, that's okay. If the league restarted tomorrow, every team in the league would be Washington FT or Washington FC or Dallas FT or FC, whatever it is they're choosing. Nobody would do this because, again, Vikings were nasty folks. Cowboys are actually ones that murdered the Indians. You can go on and on down that list.
But you're not going to sit there and tell me that they're going to take away a species of animal just because some people had them as pets back in the day or looked up to them. I don't buy that for a second. It's not that.
They're not going to do animals anymore.
It's the fact of this.
I don't think they will either. I think you're right, Doug.
You have to put into a vacuum. And this is what I meant by the black and white generally when you're talking with corporate types, right? When they give you a blueprint and they say this is the standard that cannot be crossed, there are no gray areas. There is not this is okay and this is okay. This is like it's straight up black and white. This is okay and this is not. The big question is why they only took one away with that criteria. That's what my upset was. And I understand.
I totally understand.
And I wanted to clarify. That. Look, I never said I was ever going to stop the pod. Never said that once.
Who said that? Who said that?
Because everyone thought.
I did see that earlier on Twitter. I did. You're right. Yeah.
Never would I ever going to do that. My whole process was I'm not going to be giving money to do something that I'm going to be embarrassed about, basically, and that is my point. Look, is the Wolves name cool? Yeah, but the fact is it's the Howling. I went to high school with it. Howled happens during football games. It's annoying as hell. It's trivial. It's something little kids do. Not something I can get behind because you're going to sound like Bobby Boucher trying to tackle somebody.
We've had high school teams that's recently the moniker was the Redskins just changed their name to the Wolves and Red Wolves. It's same thing with college teams.
Yeah,
it's not. It's not. Any animal is on the table. I don't think it's going to be. I'm willing to bet that it's not going to be an animal. I think I'm more on the side with Doug in the fact that it could stay Washington Football Team or Washington Football Club. And I don't think it's. I hope it's not club because that takes away from soccer. They're trying to be too much like that. Again, my opinion. But it's probably going to be some bland ass name that we're like, oh, okay.
Can I say one thing?
Go ahead, Kyle.
I do think this is all by design, and I will say I do think we're underestimating how intelligent they truly are. Because what they are doing with this is they're essentially putting us in a box and saying there's a handful of names that could possibly be it, and we all know most likely it's not going to be them. So when the name change comes around and we're expecting it to be football club, football team, is when they roll out the badass new name that nobody is thinking of. I think this is literally all by design, to be perfectly honest with you.
I agree 100%. Yeah. And I actually think that that's going to happen. Now, are they still going to have people that hate the name? Yes, sure, but that's because majority of it is because it's those fans that are still mad about it not being the Redskins, right? Which I was one of those fans. Right?
I think all of us were for a time. I think most of us were. I still hate the fact that we had to change our name. Agreed. I get it. I totally get it. But we all were born into this fandom, and it sucks. And I mean, it's a big thing, man. It's a big thing. And Kyle, you're absolutely right. Not everybody's going to be happy, and there's a good possibility that more than half the fan base isn't going to like the new name. But guess what? They're going to get used to it.
Well, what happens is, and it's just like the conversation that I had with Jason, you start winning, people aren't going to give a shit about the new name.
That's right.
Exactly. That's it. Right. And they know that. And so therefore they're banking on that. So I would almost say that in itself is also helping the football team get better and make smarter decisions with the players and personnel that they're putting on the field, because they want to put us in a winning position where we're not going to sit here and bitch and complain about, a team name that we don't like because it's not Redskins. Right.
Yeah.
I frankly think there's a bigger conversation about whether it ends up being Washington FT/FC or DC FC. When we had Travis Thomas on, I didn't even think about this, but the other thing they got to gauge is whether DC is going to get its statehood. And if it does, then say they get their statehood in 2 years, and all of a sudden now you're Washington, and DC itself doesn't even go by Washington, DC. They just go, say, by District of Columbia. So I think that's a sneaky thing they're looking at too, is whether it even should be Washington or DC.
Wow, and that's a great point, dude. I think that's a really good one. But the crazy thing is the statehood going to happen before the beginning of next year, which is probably the roundabout time we could probably say that it's going to be happening. So is the statehood going to happen before that? Not sure. It's crazy because I think there's a really big demographic that I think everyone wants the stadium back in DC.
Oh, no doubt.
Yes.
Absolutely. I thought we could be the Washington butt sniffers if the damn stadium was back in DC. I'd be ecstatic. I just my memories of growing up as a kid and my grandfather taking me to the game. I would give anything for that stadium to be back in DC, and hopefully, this timeout, quote unquote timeout that Dan's getting, he's actually going to get some work done and maybe surprise us all and to get back to DC.
What do you think he does in his free time?
Him and Jerry probably hang out.
What do you do when you're that wealthy and you have your own yacht? Like, what do you do?
You ride on the yacht and hang out in good weather.
Dude, that's what I'd be doing.
Make false promises. I'll never change the name, and then you go and change it.
And man, if he'd have changed it 5 years ago to the Warriors, he'd have still had that Indian head, and you'd be calling them the Warriors. It was only that he buckled down against Redskins that they lost it all. And again, that was because he was in a blood feud with Dwight Schrute, who just happens to own FedEx. So don't forget that too. FedEx didn't just come running during woke culture. He had a blood feud going with Dan Snyder over who was going to own the team.
Oh, sure. There's no question that it was the Native Americans that started this discussion for many years, but they weren't powerful enough to force the name change. It was corporate America that did that. And when sponsors started threatening pull out or were pulling out,
corporate America was Dwight Schrute, and Dwight Schrute was a minority owner that wanted Dan out. That's why all this stuff came from Dwight Schrute.
Correct.
So the first one to do was FedEx. And
right,
because not just because some random guy who owned FedEx didn't want him using Redskins anymore. It was Dwight Schrute was trying to get him kicked out of the league.
Well, they were trying to they were trying to take the team, and instead it went the complete opposite. And now with all these new reports coming out,
came up winning.
Dan can't lose. Dan just won't lose.
Yeah, he kept stacking those wins in the column, man. That's crazy.
Games.
Winning off the field.
Isn't the craziest part of Snyder is the fact that literally all we had to do to win was for him not to be here.
Right.
Yeah. Literally, that's it.
Well,
just stop
interesting because they said Dan's only in the building 5 days a year anyway.
That's what they're saying.
Look, you cannot. You don't have to be in the building, but you'll be on every single goddamn conference call. I'll tell you that.
Well,
right.
That's true.
If someone believes that, I got some things to sell them. That's for sure.
Well, listen, this is what you have team presidents for, besides grabbing Coors Lights and stuff like that. But
sure.
This is why you have team presidents. They're actually running the show, right?
Yeah.
They're running that building while the owner is out doing whatever he needs to do. And that's usually what most owners do. That's because that's why a lot of owners don't get involved within their teams.
Right.
And you don't see all this meddling going on with other franchises.
Ours was Danny's out the year.
Yeah.
I bet you see Dan this whole year.
Me and Keith talked about this on our last podcast. We think Vinny Serrato and Bruce Allen got away unscathed in this whole debacle when they were the ones that were supposed to be in charge during this time of all the shenanigans.
Shit.
In fairness, that neither one of those guys have gotten a job since they left. So I mean, it's not like they stumbled up.
I don't think they really needed one though.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're
None
probably
of them
not
need
looking.
them. It's pride.
I'd be willing to bet that Bruce was probably one of the ones that was feeding. some of that info
You
as
got
well.
it. You
So
got
that's
it.
why he wasn't
Yes.
up there.
You got it to
Yes.
Dwight Schrute. Absolutely.
I
I was
100% agree with that.
Oh,
Absolutely.
we already knew that. It was some ungodly number, like
Oh, I was just saying that's why he
259.
wasn't like looked at.
oh
with
yeah,
everything.
yeah.
and let me
Yes.
tell you, stuff's gonna come out about that too. That's
They
gonna hit
could, should.
that's gonna hit the court systems. You know, and I don't know how far it'll go, but again, Dan's always gonna win.
I said it.
Well, he's
Except
got
for on the
lawyers.
field.
I said it a year ago, dude. What I saw come over Twitter in the same time as Red Wolves, the crazy people, was that all of these weird avies of not these personalized people, all who joined Twitter that month, advocating for all this crazy stuff. And I was like, dude, this is weird. This seems like foreign. Like this almost seems like bot
Dan's
activity.
got bots now.
But it was like they were negative bots, and so like that's why it was like weird to me how he had negative
Well, Dwight's
bots.
got bots too.
Right.
They've
And
all
then
got
Dwight's
bots.
got bots.
when those positive bots came out, everyone was like, "Oh, like they need bots." To blah blah blah. Like, dude, are you not familiar that like
It's
everyone
a
needs
straight up
bots?
bot war going on between Dan and Dwight Schar.
Yeah,
And
essentially.
Bruce.
Yeah,
Fred's-
I mean,
Fred Smith was no innocent person in all of that either, too. So, you know,
Yeah.
again,
Well-
they all were trying to hold
Rich
that man
people
hostage.
problems, you know.
Yeah.
Rich people problems.
Look, they were holding that man hostage. They took advantage of an opportunity that had nothing to do with football, right? And what they did is they were like, we're going to come after this guy. We're going to say it's because of this, but it's really because, again, we want, you know, to get this guy out of here so we can get more ownership to this team and try to make all these decisions. And that's, you know, again, Dan never loses. The only thing he's lost at this point is the Redskins name.
The one thing he did
And about
lose
10 million.
is the relationship with the fans, right? That's something that he has severed completely.
Yes.
Like that,
Did he
that
ever-
happened.
No,
and
that's a great point.
And look, and that's what Jason had to come in and do. He had to repair that relationship. Julie knew that. It's probably one of the first things that she told him. You know, one way that Dan could win back the good graces of fans is he allows 50% of that to be cut up like the Green Bay Packers and allow fans to own the team. If I'm telling you right now, if he did that, I would be in his good graces again. He'd be cool with me.
Before we move on, I want to introduce our man Brandon. I am Rant Burgundy on
up,
Twitter.
Rant?
What's going on, Brandon? How you doing, man?
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me. Sorry, I was
Yeah,
a little
man.
bit late there, a little technical difficulties.
Hey,
Chase
no,
Young,
we
the
have
biggest fan.
We had some technical difficulties too. No one gave me your email address to invite you, Keith.
That's a big difficulty.
Yeah. Before we move on real quick, is it just me or has Julie kind of been in the background lately? Have
She's
y'all
on
noticed that
vacation.
too?
She's on
Busy
vacation.
behind the scenes, maybe.
Maybe, but usually you see something from her, you know, on a daily basis. It's been a couple weeks. I haven't seen her or really heard anything from her.
I know she was really busy right after the draft because she was interviewing all the players that were coming, like, you know, Ryan Fitz and all that stuff after the draft. So I think Doug's right. She probably went for vacation, especially after the whole year.
Charging the
Well
batteries. up, get ready.
deserved vacation. Well deserved vacation.
I also think, though, when the guy that's signing your paycheck is under the scrutiny that he was under, and that
She probably timed that shit right.
and that story was getting dropped, they knew that story when that story was getting dropped. It was all calculated. Who's to say that she's like, I'm gonna sit this one out?
Yeah, you could very well be right. Brandon, we went around the table and we kind of gave our thoughts on the news that broke today. I want to get with you and just to give us your feelings, you know, on what happened with the Warriors moniker is kind of out the door now.
I mean, to be honest, it was one of those names that was I considered that a heavy favorite. You know, a lot of fans really actually liked that one. It was really popular. I think maybe there's some other legal issues that maybe they tried to get it. We did hear about some legal issues from some possible trademark stuff. Maybe they weren't granted access to use it or however, you know, that stuff's way above my head. I don't know all the depths of those type of laws or try to understand that stuff. But I think maybe they went for it and they weren't able to get it. So now they're going back to some other options or some other default options. I think steering away from the Native American imagery. I mean, I think that was a smart call from them. You know, they're pretty much trying to cut all ties. and just, go clean slate, which I think is smart. They needed to do that. They don't want to have anything out there that could be kind of a, typical Dan Snyder move, if you will, where he's kind of, thumb on the nose to the NFL. I think he's playing it smart by avoiding that type of move, honestly. It's up for debate what could be considered a Native American imagery.
That's the other thing we were debating too. Yeah.
I got on kind of late on that one, so I don't know the depths of that back and forth, but
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. It is debate. I mean, what do we consider Native American imagery? Me, I mean, a spear. A lot of people wanted if the name was the Warriors, they wanted the spear on the helmet. That to me is Native American imagery.
Well, those people are stupid.
I mean, personally, I agree with that.
But
when you're adding the spear on it, I think Warriors can have multiple different connotations. Myself, I'm a veteran. So I consider myself, a warrior. I could relate to that. And, I even said, hey, if they go with a military theme, I think it'd be kind of cool if they did like a burgundy and gold camo pattern, or, you go something really unique. It might, some people said it kind of has like a college feel or like an Oregon type feel, but.
Or you got the anti-war people. I mean, it just doesn't end.
Right.
I agree. With that.
And again, that's why going forward, I assure you, will always be football team or football club, and then you get in no trouble from anybody.
Yeah.
And Doug, you very well could be right, man. It's tough it's like nitpicking with whatever name that
we live in woke world. If this is what's going to happen with every name that gets selected, unless you're just absolutely 100% generic. It's like earlier, again, going back, Brandon, since you missed that part of the conversation, to be fair, you and Jesse held the same argument about Wolf, Redskins, and tied to Native Americans. The only argument that I had in that process was in the beginning when Red Wolves / Wolves became a movement, all these people, including a guy named Hercules, and if you guys don't know who I'm talking about, you should, because he was in everybody's replies and mentions about connecting the dots between a wolf and a Native American. Now all of a sudden we're walking this shit back. That's where I have a problem. You guys are you guys are using logic with what you're saying, right? I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but if you step outside of your box and if you read what Jason Wright said about the Warriors name, right, and why that name wasn't selected, it's going to be the same thing for Wolves, and Warriors is more of a generic name than Wolves is, in my opinion. And that was my argument. And if you relate anything Native American, I don't care what anyone says, if we became the Wolves, my response to everyone would be, oh, spirit animal of the Native Americans. It makes sense, right? Now, that could be ignorance on my end, but that's how I would want to put it, because I still would prefer to have the name Redskins, right? So I'm going to tie it together. Hold on. Okay. Go ahead.
Is it possible that there's any chance that because of the change of Redskins that any name is going to be met with resistance? There's a certain group of people that are just going to not be happy no matter what because it's not Redskins. And then you didn't take it far enough away. Oh, you know what? It's Panthers, and there's an A, and there was an N in Redskins, and now there's an N in this new name, and it's so it gets really minute. But what I think is, I don't necessarily feel that the average person would look at a wolf and necessarily think, hey, that's the spirit animal of Native Americans, because
we're not out there complaining. I don't feel
like it would be like a derogatory thing, whereas the name before, it kind of had like a really derogatory connotation, even though it's debatable whether it was considered offensive or they're split on that too.
None of us were willing to walk the streets to complain about it until in woke world.
Well, Rand, I will say, like, I understand your point by saying, like, the average person is not going to sit here and say, like, a wolf is a correlation with a Native American.
Right.
But, like, when you look at it from a corporate standpoint, they do know that. They have the stats, the analytics, everything at their disposal showing the correlation. That's why we're saying it's kind of hypocritical to say it's okay for Warriors, which has a very broad connection, because it's not, and just like wolves all over the world, There's warriors. Even the French have warriors. You know, even Canada has
it's
warriors.
very minute. It's
You know
a very
what I mean?
minute and detailed argument. That's why I can
Right.
see why it's taken such a long time and why it's going to take a process. And these discussions are both sides have valid points. You know, I'm not going to disagree with anything you guys have to say. You know, because you're right. It does make sense to us, but I also think to us we also have this. We have Redskins in our brain. You know, we've been 20, 30-year fans where it's been ingrained. So we kind of automatically think that, and maybe the hardcore football fans out there will. But if we're talking, you know, the test of time, I don't think someone 40 or 50 years from now, I don't think my grandkids are going to see Washington Wolves and necessarily think, well, you know, my grandpa used to root for them when they were called the Redskins, and then there was this big debate, and you know. But then again, you know, we're having it now. We're in the midst of this thing, so it's all kind of new to us, and we are all really biased. I wanted it to stay Redskins too, you know. If I could have had it my way, you know, I would have stayed Redskins. But
I agree with that.
The difference is we got to accept what they pick, and hopefully they pick something that honors us and pick something that represents the fan base. And I think personally, Wolves can do that. I mean, there's a lot of cool to it. I never tied the Red Wolves. I was never pro Red Wolves, really. I thought it felt kind of forced and cheesy. You know, keep the R. We want HTTR, Red and Red Wolves. And my whole thing was like, guys, you know, the red part was kind of the offensive part, guys.
Yeah.
You know, that was I mean, the part they wanted to steer away from.
You ain't lying.
Hey, listen, and I don't know about you guys, but I don't want Red Wolves like protesting around me, you know, because we're calling them Red Wolves. In fact, all you really have to do is give me a gun. I'll go shoot all 9 of them and be done with it.
If the team makes the playoffs again this year, book Washington football team. 2 years in a row is the Washington.
Yeah.
You're not frozen, Jesse. No, you're not frozen.
Right. So I'm not frozen. Okay, you guys are frozen. It's just me then. No, okay, I was just making sure it wasn't screwed up. All right, go ahead.
And Brandon, I was going to say, I agree with you as far as 80 years from now. 80 years from now, I don't see someone being like, oh, racist Wolves by any means. The problem is we're in the now right now, and that's the problem.
See, that's where I don't think anybody can say if we're named the Wolves. And listen, I could care less what the name's going to be. It really, at this point, it doesn't bother me what the name is. I just want to win. But if we're any kind of animal, okay, and it doesn't matter what animal that we are, there's no way anybody should be able to look down on us or think that's racist by any means. So I mean, we're a canine.
The whole point is not that it's racist.
Right.
It has the connection to Native Americans, which by the definition of the points that Jason gave us, there is the correlation, just like the broad correlation with warriors. And that's the whole point. We're not saying, like, obviously, you're not going to think about this 60 years from now and look back and say, obviously, that is a racist name. It comes and derives from Native Americans. No, we're saying, like, based on the corporate kind of style blueprints they laid out, Wolves also fits the description of something that would not fit based on the correlation.
I get what you're saying.
I have an easy corny factor too. Did you see the video from the Carolina Panthers where the guy was like, "I'm not fit to call nobody Sir Per" and all that stuff? Like it's cornball stuff to me.
It is. It's marketable though. This is another thing.
I guess to kids. I mean,
you got to think too.
I'm not super excited about Howling at the Moon or throwing on a wolf headdress. You know what I mean?
No,
or whatever
I totally understand.
I don't need any of that.
In the playoffs,
I'm not appropriating the Wolves.
I'm howling my ass off if we're in the playoffs. I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna lose my voice howling so much if we're in the damn playoffs.
Well, you won't catch me appropriating the Wolves. That's all I got to say.
You won't catch me howling either.
Right. I don't want the Wolves. I don't want the Wolves at my house bitching and complaining. Oh, that guy, he hates Wolves. Yeah,
you know the Wolves.
He shot my 9 brothers.
Wolves are in cultures all over the world for as long as man was out there. Man, it doesn't have to just correlate to Native Americans. Yes, there's a line there.
I'm not even saying about the Native Americans. I'm just not in the animal.
I want to ask you guys, I really value all your guys' opinions, so I didn't really get to say thanks for even having me on, but I'd like to know what you guys think about this. I know it's kind of a two-pronged thing. Well, one, I kind of want to know, maybe I just took it differently, the statement. When he said Native American imagery, I understand the spear and the feathers and obviously the face of a Native American, but I didn't think that meant like, I don't know, everything Native American related. Like maybe
that's where I'm catching that
Native
too.
American, and maybe this is hypocritical of me. The second point is, you know, if we are trying to honor Native Americans, which I can even ask you guys if that's worth doing at this point, if that's even a necessary part of the rename process.
It is not.
Okay, so that's good. That's why.
But we did in the beginning. They did say they wanted to honor the Native Americans.
And then,
am I misremembering?
Yeah, but you can honor them by not using their stuff too.
Yeah.
Well, maybe by not using their face, but if they love Native Americans do love wolves, maybe that's a way of honoring them by naming it wolves, and
they don't want to be honored. That's the problem. They want nothing to do with football.
That's why I said that's why I said, Keith, it was a hypocritical thing of me where I'm literally battling it in my own kind of mind, you know, where I'm just spitballing with you guys because, like I said, I really value your guys' stance on that stuff. So I was kind of curious how you guys.
I'm alone. I realize, at least on this panel right here, I'm alone in thinking. I think me and you, Brandon, are probably more in agreements than with Keith, Doug, and Kyle. But there's two sides to every coin. I get that. And I don't see any problem with adapting the name like the Wolves. I don't think there would be any pushback. I don't think it just wouldn't be a big deal. There's plenty of teams, college, high school, that have the name Wolves, and it has nothing to do with the Native Americans.
I'll tell you right now, I would love the name Wolves. I'd be a huge advocate for Wolves if there was no damn howling. That is the lamest and corniest thing in the world. It's honestly, it'd be the first thing people would make fun of. And Jesse, to your point earlier about the Red Wolves designs, I've said this for a while. I love those designs. I think they're really cool. But my one point is, just the name Red Wolves does not make that uniform dope.
Yeah,
it's the fact that the artist is creating that, it looks sick, and you can use it with any name. And that's
you're right. You're right about that. That was just when that first wave came through of the Red Wolves mania. Yeah. I mean, so many concepts were being thrown out there, and some of them were really cool. Some of them looked like really corny, like college type, or even XFL.
We all loved it because it was the retro R. We all loved it because it was the retro R.
Yes, absolutely.
All it was the retro R, and they changed multiple colors on.
Which is why we definitely, if it's going to be a dog, I like that one. I like that retro.
And listen,
you're absolutely right, Doug. Red Wolves is definitely off the table. I think that's just too close to our old names, our old name to be the Red Wolves. Now let's sidetrack this. Okay, all right, Keith, go ahead.
Sorry. One last point I wanted to make, which to piggyback off what you said, Jesse, I don't see a problem with Wolves either. I think it would be cool because I think that it could tie into a name that I once loved, that I said, hey, my dad and I are Redskins fans. I can't do that anymore, right? So I would love to go for it. So I'm not arguing the point. We Whiteys can sit here all day long and say, hey, I see nothing wrong with it, but it's Chief Cloudhopper that we got to have a problem with. Okay. So Chief Cloudhopper is the one that's going to have the say so in all of this. And I think the team wants to stay away from Chief, and that's where we stand today. So sorry, go ahead. You may.
No. We all value your points, Keith. You do make a good point from time to time. I will say that once in a while, like every other podcast.
Why are you guys laughing?
You guys are all frozen to me, so like your reactions are just fucking hilarious right now.
We're all flicking you off, actually.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so Doug, we know that you think that it's probably going to be either like the Washington Football Team or Washington Football Club. Now that the main, like one of the main top two main names are discarded, it's not going to happen. Kyle, I want to start with you. What would you like the name to be? Would you like it to represent the district? Do you want it to be like an animal or what?
Honestly, I haven't really had a horse in the race. I liked Warriors just because it kind of had an aspiring kind of feel with it, something to live up to as a fan base, as a team. I really liked that kind of mindset, given with the military background of Ron Rivera and everything, I thought it would really click and make a lot of sense. It not being here, I don't really mind what else the name is, really. As long as it kind of has those values, and Jason has repeatedly said those values are being instilled, that's what I trust, to be perfectly honest. Like, am I sitting here saying it has to be this, or I'll be pissed? No, and I've never felt that way with Warriors. Like, I've always kept an open mind. I knew it wasn't going to happen. I just, seriously, from the bottom of my heart, do not want to howl. That is, like, the last thing. I've already written to Santa, like, dude, please do not allow this. I cannot.
A lot of people are in your camp too, Kyle. Brandon, what about you, man? Where do you want to see the moniker be? Do you want to DC represent the DMV area, an animal, what have you?
I mean, I think, to be honest, I like the W. I thought if they even went with the curly W, like Washington Nationals or some variation or some different type of font. Like, I do like, some type of mixture, maybe some retro type of look between the curly R with the new type of W.
I like
the double W's. I like wolves. I thought the Red Wolves idea of a wolf was cool. I just thought the Red Wolf specifically was very closely tied to Redskins.
Yeah.
And then you look, and just all of the things were just so weak. It was just such a forced thing. It was like, well, there was 12 of them that lived in the area 50 years ago. Like, okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. It's like, it's so
we
weak.
can save a species, Brandon. Think about the wolves.
Oh man! Hey, look,
you don't have to.
People were signing petitions about.
I shot all 9 of them.
Right. It would look really bad in 80 years if we talk about how our animal is now extinct,
Yeah.
I don't think that's part of the plan. You know what I mean? And even that kind of goes back to what Kyle was talking about, like the values that Ron Rivera is instilling. I don't even think Ron Rivera is really involved too much in this name stuff.
Oh, no.
I think they got people really above they've got deep think groups going on this stuff. They're thinking marketing. They're thinking long-term.
Yeah.
For all of his faults, Dan Snyder, he made his money marketing. So the man can market, he knows how to sell shit. Point blank.
And you hit the nail on the head right there when it comes to marketing. And that's another, like, I wouldn't say win, but tick in the Wolves side of the argument is because it's so marketable. I mean, just you can think of a million things that you can do. Yes, a lot of people wouldn't like to howl.
Corny. That's the only downside, really. The howling might be corny, but the Eagles sing "Fly, Eagles, Fly," and they love it. And that's corny as hell to us. So no matter what we think is cool or we are going to do, the other people are going to mock us or laugh at us because it's what we do, even if deep down inside they're that's pretty dope.
Well, I totally understand that. And "Fly, Eagles, Fly" is a song like that's easier to get involved with. I'm telling you, I went through this shit in high school. It is so annoying by the second game, dude. It's so annoying. You'll literally have people randomly. You'll be walking by them. Like, there'll be some guy sitting in his car, like, honey, you got to get to the stadium. I can't wait to howl. I got to howl at the stadium, babe. That's how people are acting about it.
I'm in the parking lot. Let me roll down my window.
Pull over, honey. Pull over. I can't.
HTT.
It's going to be pulling through the parking lot, rolling through the red gate parking lot. Everyone's going to be howling out the top of their window.
It's going to be so annoying.
After a win, it's going to be great. After a win, it's going to be great. After a loss, it's going to be howling. The other teams are going to be howling.
Yeah, and Brandon, to your point, I think you're spot on.
You're
with
right.
The whole winning aspect is going to change everything, because the fact is, here being from the area, there's a bunch of people my age that aren't fans of this team because they weren't winning. Regardless of whatever name they pick, the winning is what's going to really bring in the younger fan base, in my opinion. That's why I've always said
100%.
And the childish kind of name is not going to really bring younger fans in. It's the winning.
And for what it's worth, I'm with Kyle on this one. I don't really have a dog in the fight. I just have a feeling it's going to be Washington football team, and just from everything they've kind of said and people we've kind of been able to talk to,
the gender neutral equivalent.
Yeah, I mean,
It is.
It's boring as hell, and we're gonna get, we got picked on for years. Other teams fans, they call us the foreskins, and now we're the team with no name. And if we were to stay either Washington football team or Washington football club, we still be the team with no name. But if we win, the shit doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. And Keith, what about you, man?
If we make it to the playoffs and we get a playoff win with no name twice, it's going to be pretty tough to change.
That's what I said.
You're right.
And the more money that the actual organization or the club spends on branding for a football team, I mean, these guys are millionaires. I understand that, but they don't like throwing money out the window either. And they've spent a lot of money on this Washington football team branding already.
Yeah, I've said that since day one. That's why I always felt they would stay football team. And listen, people are like, oh, but it's so generic. They make fun of the team. They're making fun of us. Oh, please. Who cares, man? We start winning. We win in championships. We ain't worried about a name either. We Washington. That's just that's the way it is.
The burgundy gold is the only in the league. You want original. That's it. I mean, there's a million Cowboys throughout all the sports. There's a million Eagles. There's a million Giants. What there's not of in the NFL, no other burgundy and gold. And I mean, that's how I would brand it. Washington football team, go by the burgundy and gold. Everybody knows who you're talking about then, because there literally is only one burgundy and gold.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. We definitely have very distinct colors, and as has been stated from pretty much the beginning, the colors are here to stay, which I think is a relief to all fans of the Washington football team that our colors are staying, because they are unique, they are ours, and nobody else is anywhere close to it.
Now, with that being said, I don't really care what happens to the name because I'm a sellout anyways. So with me selling out, I'm just going to go ahead and just continue to sell out as Mr. Ambassador and Hog Farmer. But anyways, before we wrap this up, Jesse, you mind if I'm going to ask a last question to these guys?
Sure. Go ahead, man.
And I'm going to be 100% serious when I ask you guys this. What's your thoughts? And I'll start with you, Kyle. What's your thoughts on if we're removing the name and logo, that it gets removed from history, so that logo also gets replaced with the new logo, whatever that may be? Are you okay with that?
So basically meaning that by replacing the logo, you'd be erasing the history, right? That's essentially what you're like. You want to make sure that you're asking basically, do you want the history to be involved with the new name? The new
Correct. Trophies are saying Washington football team and not Redskins.
Correct. I do think that there is some validity to that. I remember we interviewed Bram Weinstein. That's one of the things he said. I would love to stay Washington football team because then you wouldn't have to change anything. Everything's here to stay. I do think so, Keith. I do think the history has a lot to do with it. And I do not want it to be erased. I do think that by changing the name, because I said from the get-go, I was okay with the transformation away from the team, as long from the team name, because to get away from that old racist owner who didn't want any African Americans on his team. I was okay with it at that point. That's history that I can erase and get away from, but everything after that, I need to be remembered.
And in fact, don't forget that owner renamed the team to the Redskins. Yep. It was not the Redskins when it came from Boston.
Braves.
It was still the Braves.
That's right. Yep.
He switched that on purpose. It's not hard to see why.
Yeah.
But I do think it will stay that way. There's no history in a museum is different than, seeing a Confederate flag as part of the, Civil War in a museum is much different than seeing it fly in front of some idiot's house. So you can keep the logo on the trophy. You can keep I think you can keep the name, and it can be explained that it was inappropriate and that's why it's not used anymore. Right. But I'm not sure it needs to get scrubbed.
No.
But if it is scrubbed, how does that make you feel?
It does. I mean,
it depends on what it's being scrubbed and replaced with. If it's being replaced with like Washington or like a W, I might be able to be okay with it. I might, Wolves? But that's a stretch.
Wolves?
Yeah, that's why Kyle wears that W hat for the Wolves.
Oh, got him.
Brandon. No, this old Nationals hat.
Brandon, what's your thoughts?
I don't think it necessarily we need to change the history of it. I mean, there's so much I think that's a current thing in our country right now, just a sign of the times where we want to try to change the past. But I don't want to say honor the past, or I think more remember the past. You can't change the past. It's the past. It happened. This X, Y, and Z happened. We were the Redskins. They won these Super Bowls during that time, and we changed the name after it was deemed, finally our owner smartened up after being asked for years to change it, against his better judgment. He finally changed it, late to some people, too late to earn any points back. For some people, for Dan Snyder, it's never going to be good enough because it was too little too late for Snyder, right? He's been the owner for 20 years. a lot of that's been tumultuous with losses. You know, he hasn't been very successful. He's caused a lot of waves, and you know, to go forward is a great thing, but if you go forward forgetting your past, you can easily relive that past. And you know,
Right.
hopefully by remembering those winning ways, we can get back to what brought us good. You know what I mean? Get back to our Super Bowl winning ways, because that was our team. That, you know, that's what earned a lot of these fans and a lot of our parents as fans and stuff like that, you know?
But
So to
if
me, you can't
but-
erase it.
But if we're Washington Wolves
Mhm.
next year,
Yeah.
and that name gets put on the trophies in replace of Redskins,
Mhm.
and the old logo and the old name is to be scrubbed and never thought
That's
of.
not gonna. I can't imagine that happening.
Think twice about that.
Oh God.
I'll talk a little bit more offline about that. There's the reason why I'm asking those questions, and then I want to have a conversation with you guys
way.
privately. Yes. So what is your thoughts if that were to happen?
I think that's pretty, I mean, I think it's petty. I think to me, that's more of a kind of giving into the time of the culture versus really standing your grounds on it. But we're also coming from a place where we're in a position where we were forced to change our name. So like I kind of said earlier, Dan Snyder is probably not going to want to do anything where it's a thumb on the nose to the NFL. You know, a little known thing, I believe when he bought out those portions, he got like a debt waiver that the NFL had to sign off on.
Yep.
So the NFL had to okay him being in debt to really own this team.
Right.
So if Dan Snyder's kind of, you know, who knows what kind of checklist he's working on with the NFL, that he's got to make sure all his boxes are checked in order to even, you know, love the team that, or, you know, own the team that he loves. So, you know, that's another thing we don't really think about from that aspect. So, I mean, like I said, I wouldn't want it to happen. I wouldn't be upset. I wouldn't be surprised if it does happen, just because, like I said, the culture. You know, Dan Snyder was on the books for saying he was never going to change the name, and now, like I said, if his hand's being forced, that's the only way I could see it. If the hand's being forced.
Heath, if you're suggesting at all, and I know you say you don't want to do that here, but if you're suggesting at all that those trophies get changed, makes me feel even more that it's Washington football team, because that is the easiest way to transition that without having to explain it over and over and over again years down the line. So if that's what you're getting at, and you don't have to say it here, that just makes me feel even more it's Washington football team or club.
So
honestly, that pisses me the hell off, Keith, to be honest with you, because as a society, we've got to the point where we can't even talk or acknowledge a name of the past, to the point where we have to change the trophies in order to do that. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I know I'm being short-sighted, but I mean, like Brandon said, the past is the past. We can't really change that. That's kind of weird to me.
I agree with you, Kyle. Look, we know they've been taking down statues of Confederate soldiers all across the South, and for good reason. You know, they did heinous things to African Americans, but our history as the Washington Redskins, there was never any, it wasn't done out of hate. It was, you know, the name was ignorance.
Well,
you know, there was no malice in that name whatsoever.
I think there was. The man changed it from the Braves to the Redskins for a reason. It's because he was nasty. So technically, I still say there's a difference between having something in a museum that reflects on what it was and having it out for all to see as the label that you're still using.
That's a great way to put it, Doug.
That's it. And that's why I said it's one thing to have a Confederate flag or a statue in a museum as part of the past. It's a whole nother thing to, you know, fly it in your front yard in the face of people that everybody understands what that is.
So when's the time are we going to get ridiculed if we wear you know, old Washington Redskins gear
now
out in public? You know,
now it's happening. Now it happened to me the day that the name, not the day, but the same week the name got changed. I was in the Boston airport. I was minding my own business. I had a Redskin t-shirt on, flying for work, and guy walked past me as I'm walking past him, and he said, "Take that racist shit off." Literally said that to me. And at that moment, you guys remember how I was a year ago with the whole name change thing, and I'm pretty much yelling explicit, telling this guy he can go F himself, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I would too. So,
like I
fuck
was
you.
literally like trying to cause a fight with this guy at the airport because I was so angry already at this situation happening. I was in shock. And then I've got a guy calling me a racist because I'm wearing the t-shirt. And that's where I struggled even more with it as well. But let me just say this too. Let me clarify things. I'm not saying that they're changing the trophies. The trophies still said Redskins on them. I have no insight or no information. I'm just telling you the things that I saw had that name and logo removed. That's all I can say is that name and logo was not visible
I mean,
in the history cases of that
so
building.
they're replacing all this stuff back here. Y'all see
I don't know what it was before. I'm telling you what I saw. There was no name and logo visible in those cases. Okay. And then right in the front, when you walk in, is where they had the 3 trophies. And I know that those still say Redskins because we saw those trophies on draft night. Right. And
that makes more sense.
Right. So again, I have no inside information. I'm not pretending to be cooler than people think I am. I know that my favorite guy, Tim Lawler, out there, he's going to be commenting soon. By no means, but
Timmy.
I do feel like, my personal opinion, guys, it's heading into that direction. But what's odd is there's other places in the building that still have it, but it's not in the public it's not in the public eye.
You can see on the practice, the indoor bubble field could still have
the bubbles, the weight room.
That could make sense, we saw the video, and that video hurt when they put that video out of them tearing down. It kind of felt like they were rubbing it in our faces a little bit, at least to me, when they were taking down all the logos and the moniker throughout the Ashburn and at FedEx Field.
Oh, I lit up the social media team. They unfollowed me because of it.
Yeah, that I understand. I didn't like the video. Don't get me wrong, but to the public eye, I think that they have to do that. But for them to, I don't know if I can get my point across. I can understand why they would do that because they are moving on, but I don't think they're ever going to forget it. They're not going to change the name on the trophies. I wouldn't think. I think if they did that shit, it would be fucking nuts.
Honestly, it'd be a great teaching lesson for a young kid. Here, this is what our name used to be, but why'd you change it? Because it was racist and it was deemed that we shouldn't be calling people that. They shouldn't have an organization with a name like that. So, like,
I don't think they should.
What I'm saying is keep it on the trophy so you can have those educational type of talks. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying to erase it. I'm just saying that it shouldn't be erased. Point being. That's all I'm
with you. That's
Doug hit it. It shouldn't. Doug hit it out of the park. I think, it's one thing where you're looking at it in a trophy case where you're saying, all right, you know what, this is what it used to be. But then again, bringing it back to Keith and Kyle, kind of saying, you have that educational moment. We're changing now. You might have seen it around because we used to be this. It might be a little bit here and there, but it's not in the public eye. And this is what it used to be. You have that opportunity for a lesson for growth. I'm a family man. So, as a father, I never pass up an opportunity to kind of teach my kids a lesson or, give them that little educational moment or whatever it might be. That could be the new father and son bonding moments when we're taking our kids to do the tours to say, well, I remember when we won these 3 Super Bowls and, hopefully we're able to get a 4th one on there with whatever the new team is, whether it's Washington football team or Wolves, or at the end of the day, we're all going to root for this team no matter what the name is realistically.
And that's exactly why I asked the question. It's more hypothetical because, again, I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if it did, though, to be honest with you, later on down the road. But, in general, if we're all good with now the name being changed to a different name, are we good with the history being changed? And that's where, people can call me a sellout about the name all day long, but you start effing with the history. Now
that's where I draw the line.
And I'll tell you
what,
the
line with that.
And I'll tell you what, I'm 100% serious. If their history starts getting replaced, you can say, they can tell me bye-bye to fan ambassador because I won't sell out for the history. I can tell you that right now.
I don't think
Yeah,
they'll
no,
be
I'm.
dumb enough to do that, Keith.
Yeah, I don't think they can't. They can't fucking do that, man.
I
They
hope
can't.
not. I hope
That's
not.
all we've
can't.
had for 20 years is history. So
Yeah.
they ain't getting rid of that yet.
Yeah, for 20 years it carried us through, right?
No, you're absolutely right about that, Brandon. You guys got anything else? Anything else to add?
All right.
No.
Well, Kyle, start plugging.
All right, guys. Thank you. I can't thank you guys enough for having me on again. First time actually being on here with Keith, by the way. This is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys were able to link up and make something happen. Unfortunately, I can't see John today, but I hope he's feeling better with everything that he had. And you can follow us, The Burgundy Zone, on Twitter at The Burgundy Zone. We're on Instagram, Facebook, platforms, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. We're all over the place, dude. Just search for The Burgundy Zone.
Big Doug.
Awesome.
At the Big Doug Show, it's easy to find on there, fellas. This was great. I think we got a lot accomplished today.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't get anything accomplished on these things.
I came
feel
in
like we
wanting
got
to-
something
True.
accomplished
I came
today.
in wanting to fight Brandon and fight Jesse, and here I am. I wore a tie for you guys.
Virtual
And
You're a
hug.
nice guy.
I know, and instead I want to hug you guys. I love both
a
of
virtual Jason Wright hug.
you. Yeah. You know, one of those, hold on, it was one of those pull you in, right? And then give you that back. But then me, I was like, nah, bro. And I went like that, and I squeezed his back shoulder muscles. He's a big dude, man. And then I was like, all right. And I was like,
God.
I even called him a nickname too. I was like, all right, JW. All right, well,
Shut up.
I'll holler at you later, big dog. And then, you know, I gave him, and then I was like, you know,
This
I
got
know-
very uncomfortable quickly.
and then I'm like, I know rapper Big
Did-
Pooh
didn't
too.
it?
And he's like, oh snap, you know rapper Big Pooh. And then I was like, boom, boy, I was out of there. Like it worked out. Brandon, go ahead.
Brandon, yeah.
This at Twitter. I'm Rand Burgundy. I appreciate you guys for having me on. You know, this was fun, good laughs, and it's fun to actually have some debates on here where you can actually see people's faces and read their tone. You know, I come across like a dick a lot on there because you
Me
can't
too,
really
bud.
tell I'm just messing around, joking. But you know, I love having laughs and going back and forth. I think with more of these debates, you get to see more of the sides of other people, or
Yeah.
you know, you actually get to hear their sides of the argument, and you get to see everyone's not so stand on their ground. It's like, hey, this is my stance. I'm cool with you. Like, I'm not. We might be disagreeing, but it's all love on all over the place. So again, I appreciate you guys having me on. So thank you.
Except for Tim Lawler. He's not allowed.
Maybe Tim can bash me. Tim, bash me.
Yeah, there you go. There
Hold
you
on.
go.
Tim Lawler. Yeah, I don't like you, Keith. I don't like you. I hate you, Keith. That's all right. We're gonna have him on the show tomorrow night. It's all good.
Oh,
really
it's
coming
on. Yeah, guys, look, it
You
was a blast
suck.
getting you guys on here.
Shut
I love
up,
these
Jesse.
round tables, except for Keith because he's a dumbass
link.
most of the time.
You're the weakest link.
And,
Where's the old
You're
guy at?
and you're
The old
the
guy.
biggest sellout in Washington fandom. All right, guys, that was our bonus pod. You're gonna catch us for our regular show tomorrow night. We hope you enjoyed, and hail to the team.
Doug's like, I can't believe I'm here for this shit.